Добрый день, вновь программа «Переплет». Я Андрей Алехин, как известно, среди 7 смертных грехов.
Hello, you're watching the TV program Binding. I'm your host, Andrei Alekhin. As you know, among the 7 deadly sins in the Holy Bible, the most terrible one is the sin of graphomania. When an official begins to write memoirs, this is a terrible thing. But now we have not an ordinary situation. First, this official who started writing memoirs worked as an official in the town called Pripyat, and in 1980 he began to write about everything that happened there. So this is not the sin of graphomania. About 30 books were written by writer Oleksandr Esaulov, who is our special guest in our studio today. Alexander, tell me please, what should happen to a man so that by the age of 52 he suddenly begins to write books? After all, you used to be a normal person and everything was alright with you. Well, I am still normal. Tell me, how people suddenly become writers?
Ну, в 52 года еще писателем не был. У меня первая книжка вышла в 54 года.
Well, at the age of 52, I was not a writer. My first book came out when I was 54, but it had its own background. In fact, I wrote poems all my life, since my school days. But the books, it's because it happened that on November 18, 1980, on my birthday, I came to the town of Pripyat. Those times were like that, you know, it's necessary. My wife and child were in the hospital, but they said I must do it. I came and worked, and in the autumn of the same year, in November 1985, I was elected deputy chairman of the Pripyat City Executive Committee. Well, you lived perfectly well, and there was no need to become a writer. But I did not become a writer. When it exploded at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, everyone said Chernobyl, Chernobyl. Chernobyl here had an indirect meaning, just the name. Because when they started building a nuclear power plant, they began to build it on the territory of the Chernobyl county. Pripyat did not exist yet. Well, let's say the Khmelnytskiy nuclear power plant. It is in the city of Khmelnytskiy. Or the Rivne nuclear power plant. And that's a fact. And when I saw the scale of the events I had witnessed and felt, I began to write. It's easy to make a diary. And so 20 years after, in 2005, I pulled my diaries out of the closet, where they had been lying for almost 20 years, typed them on a computer, brought them all in order, as I understood it then, and for the first time in my life I went to Lviv for a forum of publishers.
И первый раз в своей жизни поехал во Львов на форум выдавцов, форум издателей.
It's quite a bold initiative.
И стал предлагал наши что-то украинские издательства.
So I began to propose my work. I proposed it to our Ukrainian publishing houses, but they turned them down. Then we did not have a war with Moscow, and the Moscow publishing house Europe accepted it. And then in 2006 it was the 20th anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster. That was my first book that was titled Memoirs. I refused the royalties. I took books and gave them to my colleagues, with whom we went along this insanely difficult path. I'm not exaggerating, and when I speak about it, the hair on my head stands. That's the way it was. It is a town called Lviv, from which 50,000 people were evicted. And these people, where would they go to seek shelter and assistance? To the authorities? We were evacuated in one trip and then divided into two. The Ivankovo County and Polissya. I was sent to the Ivankovo County by representatives of the City Executive Council. And in Polissya, there was the late mayor Volodymyr Volozhko. People came to us and said, "Here he is, we must bury him. We have a wedding and we must go to the maternity clinic." And this was all in these books. These are memoirs. I just wrote and informed. By the way, you did not plan to become a writer. These were just memoirs of the 20th anniversary. And what happened next? I am often asked why I started writing books for children. Well, I'm a man over 50 years of age, and my books are for children. You see, I cannot answer this question. Most likely someone in heaven clicked some button in my head or heart. After the success of The Watchtower, the first Ukrainian fantasy movie, in fact, the producers are scouring for good fantasy scenarios. And Esaulov has many such movie scripts, and not only for children. There are scripts for adults, and they are absolutely brilliant. Oleksandr, well, still, it's not very clear. A man who started with Chernobyl, with serious things. Yes, for us, the image of Chernobyl, of course, is Pripyat. But I want to say that, unfortunately, it seems now our boys go to war and books about the war are being published, meaning there is a demand for them. After all, it is impossible not to write about this subject. 20 years have passed, and suddenly children's books appear. I understand that you can write fantasies and in other genres, but why books for children? All the more on serious subjects like abduction of children and so on. It's not that simple. Not just children, but dog children. All the more, that's it. Tell me how this idea came to mind and why books for children, children's detective stories, children's fantasies and so on. Well, I'm telling you, I'm trying anyway. My first series were fantasies about the adventures of children in the computer world. 5 books were written. They were published by the Kapranov brothers in The Green Dog. So Ukrainian publishers suddenly decided to respond saying, no, please come back, we'll publish your works. No, I wrote the first book and began to propose it. In Vinnytsia there is a publishing house Teza, and it was located 2 stops away from the house in which my father lived. That's the thing. But my father was a military man, and my brother was sent to Vinnytsia after university. So this city is not alien to me. And I searched on the internet to find whom I could propose my book. Well, I found Teza. I offered my first fantasy about adventures. They say, you know, we publish books for younger children. And they offered me the Kapranov brothers. And when these books came out, it was clear that they liked them. Teza recommended Volodymyr Briskin, and he suggested, listen, try to write a detective for children. Well, I thought it over. You see, kittens and puppies, it's all for children aged 4 to 5. It is especially for this niche of toddlers.
Я так подумал. Понимаете, вот кошечки-собачки это для деток там 5-4, это для маленьких.
You know, our little children, especially girls, are princesses, and they live in castles. Oh yes. But this kind of literature, you know, in every book I try starting with this fantasy adventure on the computer and end up with a children's detective story. I try to give to the children some necessary and interesting information for their lives.
Я стараюсь детям дать информацию, которая им пригодится по жизни.
About the adult world. Yes, about the adult world. Here's one of the detectives. It is titled Red Rooster Under the Roof. It is written at the request of firefighters. They asked me to write a book for children so the children would read it and knew how to deal with emergency situations in order to survive. I had to come up with a story. It's a detective. I read a bunch of literature to write it properly. You know, I thought, if the literature on such subject exists, there is very little of it. So I decided to focus on this particular subject to embellish this niche in the world of literature. I will say that it practically does not exist. I mean literature not about rabbits and squirrels, but books that tell about the modern world.
Вы знаете, Саша, вот я вам честно скажу, в сравнении с европейской литературой, которая, с довольно малых лет детей приучает тому, что...
You know, I will honestly tell you, in comparison with European literature, which from a very young age accustoms children to the fact that there are diseases in the world, death, which can lead to the divorce of their parents, their grandmother have fallen seriously ill, and that not only their hamster can die, but their mother or father, and the children need to be told prepared for this in some special way. Then, when the children grow up, they are ready for such unexpected things in life. There is another point of view. For example, our northern neighbor speaks not of the devil. It needs to protect its children from everything. The parents do not let them see people smoking on the TV screen, and they do not let them see any scenes of violence, even minimal ones. So children should be protected from this. And when they become adults exactly at 18 or 21, they suddenly open their eyes and they will be ready for anything. Why did I touch upon this topic? It seems to me that it is very important to become Europeans, and indeed our Ukrainian children, in the country that survived the Chernobyl accident, and a country in which a war is currently raging and the fighters are dying. And the children, how to say it correctly, prepare them for the fact that they will one day become adults. Do you understand, yes? I think it's wrong to not show people smoking to children at a young age. It is necessary to show smokers so children can understand the consequences of such a bad habit and show the right way to live from the right angle. If the child sees that a pedestrian was hit by a car, then it is necessary to show why this happened. How can this be avoided? And in such a form so that children will be interested, because didactic lectures have long been of no interest to anyone, all the more to children. That's why I was captivated by these detective stories, because I thought up something interesting that would be interesting and exciting for a child to read. And at the same time, it gives them certain knowledge. So when I wrote Star Train, it turned out to be such a fantastic book about a little boy from the planet Golush, who came by a star train to his grandfather to go fishing in some nearby galaxy. But the train broke down and one of the boys was on the Earth in Kiev. And he was thrown to us on the planet Earth, and our boy is beside this boy. And the boy was guided by thought. And he happened to be in Kiev in times of the invasion of Batu. When did Batu take Kiev? Well, perhaps in some strange year. In 2040, in December. So I spent so much time in the museum. Then there was no Kiev museum and had no premises, and that's all. And I was in the Ukrainian National Museum. I studied it all. So a child reading this book historically saw and understood that's the way it was. Listen, do you receive any proposals such as "let's film it, Ukrainian cinema is now reviving"? Ooh, name them, point them with a finger. I will bow to the feet of that writer who does not want his book to be on the screen. Well, no wonder. As in the case of our modern lieutenant literature, where the war began and the man became a writer, here it was Chernobyl. But was it surprising? Esaulov did not write constantly about one topic, he became a children's writer. And yet, the children's writer Esaulov appeared on the scene. And it's not kittens and rabbits, this is a male children's literature. Oleksandr, you have movie scripts not only for children, but also quite adult ones. There's also the topic of nuclear waste, its bitter waters. And there's another very cynic work, which I consider to be a real movie, about a strange and terrible story from our past titled Faculty of General Love. Tell me please about it, because this is a topic that, in my opinion, could be a potential scar-winning script. Well, I would have liked to work on the script in this book. I will tell you about it if there was an order for. I wrote the script, but... You know, I'm not a magician. I'm still learning to be one. But who knows, millions are watching us and maybe we will give someone an idea. I hope to God. Well, talking about the Faculty of General Love, well, the fact is that this novel is not simple and very dear to me. It is written about my wife's grandfather, who was shot in 1938 being a Polish spy. So, on request of my late mother-in-law, that is, this is her father, he was found in the Khmelnytskiy division. Imagine, this is a war, evacuation, and everything is happening at once as it should be. And what does this book say about the Faculty of General Love? What is there? Well, there are two plot lines. Here in Pripyat, at the moment, consider the accident and a girl meets a boy. The boy lives in Pripyat and the girl came to a friend from Kyiv for the weekend. She studies at the university there, and in the end it turns out that this boy is a grandson of a NKVD agent who led the criminal case of her grandfather, and she's the granddaughter of that grandfather who was shot. And so for myself I raised the question, what should they do? Then I realized that children are not responsible for their fathers. And if this is true love, then it must end as any real love story ends. Now you are talking more like a TV series producer, and I'm sure that it would be very, very good to shoot an interesting TV series with such an intriguing storyline. Yes, 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 it's 100%. Yes, it's 100%. If you have read Esaulov's books, then you can easily know that they're very artistic and made for TV. They're very cinematic. All that you are reading is directly visible right before your eyes. And let's hope that there will soon be filmmakers who will take up this matter.
Вы слышите? Вы слышите?
Do you hear? Do you hear? I cannot hear it either. The heartbeat in an empty town, and I hear only echoes of pain, as if waves are beaten under the ice.
Мне больно город видеть.
It hurts to see the town, but not to hear it. It pains me to feel with my heart how the town seems to be alive, yet it does not breathe. But the town did not want to die. It wanted to live and enjoy children, under the sound of a kiss, fall asleep. But it was not enjoyable. April came and made people's hearts tremble. Do you hear? Do you hear? Only a quiet, silent echo of the church of a branch in the empty town, as if the town whispered something to you and fell asleep, again into a deep eternal sleep. Well, Oleksandr, I thank you for this meeting. I wish you meetings not only with me, but also with major publishers, readers, and producers. So please write more, because when an adult and a child are joined in one person, a situation which is quite rare, adults usually forget that there were once children as well. It is perfectly fine, and I think that our Ukrainian literature is very powerful. Thank you for taking time to visit our studio and tell viewers our thoughts as a writer.